Hey everyone, welcome to episode 6 of Level Up with Lori. Today my guest is someone who I have been admiring for many, many years, Shelly, who is currently the CEO and provost of Ubiquity University. Shelly, I am so excited to have you with us today to talk about this topic, why education is failing and what you need to know right now. So thank you for coming. Just to give a little bit of background information, I met Shelly in 2009 when she invited me to speak at that California Society of Association Executives. I think it's the annual meeting, right? The one in April in Tahoe. And I got to do a couple sessions with different folks on business storytelling. And one of the things that really stands out for me about Shelly that I think will enter our conversation today is I see a difference between topics that are mainstream, leading edge, and bleeding edge. And topics that are mainstream don't so much interest me. Topics that are leading edge or kind of been out there for a while have some intrigue, but I invite guests because they have bleeding edge. They're on the fringes of what's happening. And that from a foresight perspective is absolutely invaluable. So welcome again, Shelly, because I know we're going to touch on some of those things. I don't know if our show has gone live yet. I'm kind of looking to see if I can, if it has on LinkedIn. So just give me a second here to see if a notification pops up. Supposedly we're live. I don't know if that's the case. You know what I'm going to do, because I'm not seeing anything, is this is really strange. I think because we should have a show. There we are. There we are.
Hey, there we are.
Wow, there we are. Okay, so we're only like 2 minutes into this, and we're finally showing up live on LinkedIn to me. So I just wanted to say, here's who's joined us today. Duke Oakes has joined us, Monique Thompson, Duran Zilberstein, Lisa, one of my students who's in Italy, who's in the midst of the coronavirus, is with us. Roger Knocker from South Africa. He tells us that we're live in South Africa, so I'm so excited. Thank you for joining us. So what I'd love is please don't lurk in the background, because if you lurk in the background, I don't know if you're with us. So announce yourself, tell us where you're from, and a little bit about yourself. Monique Thompson says that she's from the UK. So we already have a couple of different country nations with us.
Fantastic.
So start us out with something. Ubiquity was started in 1996. So I'm going to make an assumption. I assume that the university was started because somebody, someplace saw disruption that was going to happen in the future in the higher education system. So maybe you can start us out there in terms of what you saw as the disruptions, what's kind of come to fruition, and then we can talk about where we're going and what's happening.
Sure, absolutely. Well, the Wisdom School was originally founded as a graduate school with master's degree programs and PhD programs, based around wisdom traditions, looking back at consciousness and indigenous wisdom and those sorts of topics. Along the way, the leadership and the board of directors saw that the move to online education was coming. And so they were really on the forefront of getting out and getting into the live online environment. What's happened since then is we've had to take a real rethink about not just recording videos and putting things online, which is sort of the traditional way, but we've had to rethink education as a whole in what we see is a global context of hypercomplexity. So it has been a long journey to make the steps that we've made, but we consider ourselves the first actual global university. We are based all over the world. Our staff is all over the world, and we are very interested in those topics that link us together as humans and then are going to help us deal with a highly disrupted and hyper complex environment moving forward.
So stop for us just a second and clarify a few things for me. That you started as a Wisdom University, does that mean that you are in search, always in search with any topics that are brought forth? And by the way, just for full disclosure, I do develop courses for Ubiquity University, as well as work as an adjunct for a different campus here in the US. So have you always been like in search of this deeper wisdom? Because to me, wisdom is, I remember the dean of a school of business at Tom Murren at Duquesne University in the mid 90s said to me that to him, wisdom was the practical application of knowledge, and that it wasn't where universities, and that would have been about the time that Ubiquity was starting, that he said that, and we were doing our strategy sessions. Is that what that means to you? Because that's not what I see when I teach at other places.
Yeah, what we're seeing is a bifurcation in traditional education around specific sort of turf wars that have broken out between the wisdom philosophical sort of background and then the new science, new tech, and that sort of thing. There seems to be this bifurcation. And we believe that we need to begin to bring those things back together to be able to express the full thing. If you think of Ubiquity as a pair of glasses, which I wear and many people don't, but the idea is you have two lenses that are allowing you to focus. One of our lenses is on the mystery schools of antiquity, Plato's Academy, ancient wisdom, indigenous wisdom from peoples. And we're looking at that far past. And we're also looking at a far future. We're looking at neuroscience and how the brain actually processes information. We're looking at physics and the reflection of what we see as a shared reality and the interrelatedness of all things. And we're looking at artificial intelligence and the nexus between biophysical and digital systems. And with the two lenses that we have in this pair of glasses, what we're ending up doing is we're ending up anchoring in what we believe is really the future of education, which is actually grounded in the liberal arts, as defined and started in the Shard Academy, in grammatica and rhetorica and dialectica, but translating that into a 21st century context. So that we can be more about, not about what we're doing, but about how we're being. And so that's sort of the nexus. So it's odd to see a course on the four paths to the divine ground of being and creative problem solving. but we really believe that there's a nexus there that we're losing as traditional universities are becoming more about the brand and, well, we're a science school, we're a tech school, we're a liberal arts school, we're a full philosophical religious school. We think all of that is necessary for students to be able to understand what is happening in the world today.
Well, that's really interesting. And I would, for those of you who are listening to us, and I'm kind of looking off to my iPad here, feel free to ask us questions and interrupt. While you'll be on a bit of a delay, we will take your questions and thoughtfully respond to them, because I think that this is a topic that requires a lot of reflection. So what I see and what I hear from what you're saying and what I experience in the universities or campuses that I have visited with or have worked with over the past number of years is that they've gotten away from understanding the totality of the person, the whole of the person. And that what they've done is they've become very skill-based, not even competency-based. But, can you do this skill? And allow me to talk about how I see this reflected. And I'll use my my students the past 4 years as examples. My courses are online. And I tell my students in the syllabus that we're going to do discovery learning. And I am going to ask questions of them, thought questions. They'll respond on discussion posts. I will ask a question in return. And I ask them to ask each other questions. And my reason for doing that is because I don't see the skill of thinking. I don't care what type of thinking. I mean, I don't mean this in a bad way. It's critical or strategic. I mean, I'm teaching strategic thinking this term. But I don't see that we've helped people to hone their own voice, their ability to express what they feel, what they think, the synthesis of what they're learning in light of their own experiences. So to me, there's like this other piece, right? You've got the bifocal. I'm looking to the past, this wisdom piece of it. I'm looking to the future, as you've described, but then I have to integrate, right? Am I picking up on this, that's kind of, that we have to start embracing more of that? I mean,
yeah, 100%. 100%. And, we're seeing that play out in every industry, in every profession, in every socioeconomic situation, in our inability to really truly grapple with climate change. What we're seeing is a people that has been trained to take the information from the professor, regurgitate it for a grade, and then move on. And we're not seeing this learning how to learn.
yeah.
We've put the emphasis on teaching. I'm going to cram your head full of stuff.
Right.
Which you may or may not be able to handle, deal with, scaffold correctly, figure out how you feel about it. And if you don't emotionally engage with it, you're just going to discard it when you move on. Thank you, Algebra 2, right? For me.
Right. For me too.
Yeah. And it got worse for a while when online education started. It actually got worse because then it was like, I just need to read this and answer the quiz and I'm out and I'm good. And really what we're needing to see is this return to community-based learning, that you are learning in concert with other people, that you are engaging and you're learning how to learn. And we have done a very bad job of that in the last 40 years, and seeing the consequences of that, because people who are going to school to learn how to make a widget or sit and do numbers all day don't necessarily need those higher order critical skills that every single person needs today. And so that delivery system is not built for the kind of education that we need in a massive amount of time, or in a massive amount of people in a very short amount of time.
Right, but I have a comment from Lisa here. She says, amen, sister. We regurgitate what we read, not how we feel, not how we understand it. But what I see happening, and I don't mean to take you off course, because I do want to come back to the disruption.
Oh, yeah. No, I love going off course with you. This is good.
So in the data science industry, where a lot of my connections are data analytics, data science, leaders of these functions, leaders of organizations, people are just buying a $99 course on some site. And there are multitudes of these sites, and learning on their own. And the piece, to me, there's two pieces that are missing from what you're talking about. One is the ability to have insight in the community of other people, because we're not learning how to do that thoughtful sharing and reflection with each other, which means that we're not learning how to dialogue. So in the workplace, we see more debates, kinds of conversations, and we call them dialogue.
I'm right, I'm going to win, not dialogue.
Right. Well, and then we see the cramming down the throat of information as well. But the other piece of that is, as I was alluding to, we don't see the individual developing their own perspective. And when they share their perspective, others don't know how in the workplace then to respond to it, or even on LinkedIn, in a kind manner, or how to tease it apart for them, right? That's what you're talking about, is really developing. It's these human pieces. And by the way, I understand that's the blower, the blower.
Yeah, and I apologize. It wasn't supposed to happen today. To anyone who's listening, yard guy came suddenly, unexpectedly. That's the nature of hyper complexity. So we're dealing with that today.
Right, exactly. That's what we're talking about. But that's, that's kind of what I want you to ping off of. But I also want to read you a comment. Anthony Warren has joined us from Phoenix, and he says, "Is this based on the level of the degree? I felt that BA BS is just learning vocabulary. Master's degrees understand how information is applied, and doctoral degrees are higher level thinking." And I think what you're saying is we might need it everywhere.
We need it everywhere. And that's kind of the point. That the degree, that's a very common mental model. That's the mental model that we've accepted for all this time, the vocabulary, the expression, and then the higher order thinking. That is absolutely a mental model that we've had. And for a long time, it was a very good model. We trained people to a certain point for high school. Then there was always this kind of elitism factor that went into higher ed, where you would sort of move through those stages. What we're saying now is that because the time to deal with these hyper complex issues is growing so short, that we have to shortcut that mental model at every moment. So yes, as you're staging yourself and you're learning, absolutely, but we want you to be thinking critically, using higher order skills right along the way. And part of that, which goes a little bit into what you were speaking of a little earlier, I'm sort of wrapping a couple of things together, is this idea of knowledge, self-mastery, and impact that we embed in every course, whether it's a single course that people take, whether it's bachelor's level, master's level, PhD. And our PhD program is very traditional. I mean, it's what you would expect a PhD program to be. But at the lower order, what we're interested in is the knowledge and information that you're taking in, whether it's accurate, whether it's real, whether you're applying critical thinking skills to it. And then the self-mastery piece, how do you feel about the knowledge that you're bringing in? Are you angered by it? Are you blasé about it? Are you excited about it? Are you joyful about it? How does that color how you're interpreting this knowledge? And both of those things, what you know and how you feel about what you know, translates into the decisions you make on a daily basis and take action in the world. And that, for us, is the engine behind that, blending all of those things into one thing. No matter what level you are at, if you can do those things, you'll be able to leapfrog through those stages that we have kind of told people they have to follow, versus whether that really is the educational path a person would take.
Well, what it also says, and I'm getting a number of comments here that I want to also read to you. It also says that maybe then, how do I say this? Because I'm attached to a university as an adjunct, so I do have a love of this. But it may not matter. I mean, if we could do knowledge, self-mastery, and impact in middle school, high school, preparatory school, whatever you call it, right? So that students may enter a trade, but the ability to combine those three things together allows them to excel at that part of their life. It allows them in their community to be a participant in community-based decisions in the political process, if that's part of what they're allowed to do in their country, to run for some sort of local town office, and to be able to help people to think through complex issues that today no longer are served by a mechanistic approach to learning. Those are my words. Is that picking up?
No, and I think that's absolutely true. And I think we need to, at some point, admit to ourselves that we have 7.6 billion individual souls on the planet as we speak. You would have to build a college. I believe the statistic is a complete campus a week for the next 250 years to meet the needs of the learners that we desperately need to equip to be able to handle what's coming at all of us as a global society. So this is, we talk about student debt. Well, this is a function of the marketplace. The less slots you have, the more people you block out, the higher the price tag gets. And we can talk about all the reasons why that's a bad idea. But we have to come to terms at some point with the fact that the system that we built is not suitable for today.
So stay with that.
Suitable for some, but not suitable for all. So what do we do with the not all?
Right. So you're getting lots and lots of comments here. So Anthony was saying that he agreed with your comment about the different leveling. Sandra Hoskins, who's joined us, I don't know if Sandra's in the US today or in Canada. She says we need it started at kindergarten. If we don't start with children, we miss a great opportunity to improve the level of comprehension and reasoning.
Agreed.
And Luis, who's joined us, Luis, would love to know where you're from. He says, Anthony does bring up a good point. It seems to me that a BA, BS degree is not so much about community of learning, but more so grades and tests, which is what we're saying is problematic. And then Raquel Collins has joined us from Vancouver, where she works in higher education. And she said, a very interesting topic and conversation. Wish I could stay on to contribute, but have to run off to moderate. And this will be taped. So this is on YouTube within literally minutes on my Level Up with Lori playlist. And you can re-listen to it. So thank you for joining us at the beginning, Raquel. And she said that she wanted to thank you for imparting your views. Very relevant and very timely. And I agree with her. And then so Zwalethu, who has joined us, asks a question. And I'm sorry if I've mispronounced your name. Lori, what's the role of industry certifications? And I think that this would be good for you to address, Shelly. The knowledge taught at, he was talking about business analysis level, sometimes does not translate to working knowledge. Right? So talk more about that, because I think that's where you're headed with your conversation.
Sure, absolutely. The funny thing is, I became aware of ubiquity while I was writing a white paper in 2016 with a fellow collaborator on the association role in the new education paradigm. I was actually taking on post-secondary. That's a free white paper. We'd be happy to give you the link for people to download if they want to watch it. I absolutely believe in multiple pathways, that all of those multiple pathways need to be honored for what they are, and we need to learn how to recognize skills on behalf of people who've earned them. So I spent years in the association profession working with certification programs, and I have a great love for them, because if you look at me, I'm sort of the prime example of one of my own students. I was in high school. I went to 11 different schools before I graduated from high school.
Wow.
I was not going to be able to go to college right away, and I knew that. So I got a slot. I competed for a scholarship and got a slot, became a dental assistant. So I was a dental assistant. I was supporting my way through school, but life happened. It took me 9 years to get a 2-year degree because I got pregnant. I was having to go at nights, and just this whole big mess. And my route to professional success was my association, the American Society of Association Executives. And I was able to get my certified association executive and craft a career for me, for myself. However, I've always wanted to be a university professor. I always wanted to learn and teach in conferences and meetings and workshops. But it's that learning, that hands-on experience with learning and seeing the weaknesses in it, because sometimes we only measure those hard skills. We don't measure empathy. We don't measure leadership. We don't understand power and influence. There are things that as whole humans we need to have that would really help the certification industry. You know, my thing is I want to provide what will help people, and I don't care how they get there. I just want them to be honored for the knowledge and the wisdom that they have. I'm working on my master's degree right now because I have, of course, it's like as a provost of university, probably need to get that master's done. But it's that's the thing. It's to be a lifelong learner is a set of skills that I had to develop on the fly, but now I want to help anyone get that skill set. I'm not special. I just had the right people at the right moments tell me the right things to help me be a self-motivated learner, and the professional success followed. So I'm a big believer in it. Big believer in education writ large, but certification programs themselves need some work. Because all we've learned how to do is assess those quantitative things. We're not really good at assessing qualitative things.
Well, but I think there's another piece to it, and let me share this, and then I'll read you some more comments. I think it's becoming about the certification. Can I take the test? And there are ways to game these systems. I'm sorry. I know it. I used to work for many years in project management certification. I actually led the project management master's certificate at UW-Madison back in 2001. For the university. And people can game the system. They don't have to come through all the courses. They can take these other classes and prep online and then take the test. And as long as they've got all of the hours that are in already, they can do it. And they do that because it's been so hard, I think, and it's been so pricey to get what we need. And so now we're having to figure out something different. So the comments that are here is, I think maybe I don't have anything new. Luis was just telling us that he's from LA and he now lives in Houston. And I'm going to be in Houston, Luis, in a few weeks. That's my goal. April 17th, I'm going to keynote at a conference. So I think that's the other piece of it, right? Is we've made it tough for people. And even when I think about learning and community, we're making that tough too, because people either have to create their own mastermind groups, their own mastermind study groups, in order to get the thinking behind what might be in a book of knowledge or some other piece, right? When it comes to the industry or professional association or trade association certifications. So if this is where, let me take you kind of to the next piece. And then I would also love to see some more questions too. Sandra just said, certifications have become about hitting the sweet spot on the job search boards.
Exactly. It has become, certification has become the substitute for the bachelor's, master's, and PhD in certain, the certification really was born in the 60s and 70s because of the deficiencies we were already seeing coming out of the university system on the part of employers. So it has become a substitute. However, that substitute's not going to last for long because exactly what you said, Lori, there's two things. Artificial intelligence is creating massive inroads into professions that we think are safe and that are not safe. And the second thing is, of course we can game the system. That's why we have to market the certification. I mean, if our certification was like the best thing ever, we wouldn't have to convince people to sign up, right? They would just be knocking down the doors. So we've told ourselves a myth that this is the perfect substitute for other knowledge. If it was, we wouldn't be looking for members, would we? So something's got to change.
So there's a couple of things I want to summarize, and then I think move us to this next piece here. We know in the legacy universities, right? By legacies, I'm meaning those institutions, and there are many that have been around for 100 years, who are still doing things a traditional way. They are losing students. Even if they have a brand name, they're losing students, and they're losing them by the droves. And it's crazy. Yet we know from the industry certification perspective that we have more and more people. I'm assuming that this is correct. You help me here, but this is me putting on my futurist hat here. More and more people clamoring for these because that's the only way to get in the door, to get the job, to get on the resume, and other sorts of things. And it's an easier pill to swallow in some ways. You know, people say to me, you should go back for a PhD. I'm going to be 62 this year. I know I'm not going back for a PhD. I will figure out a way to get a role like yours, Shelly, someplace, you know, because I love higher education. But I'm not going back for a PhD. People are like, well, it's only 6 years. I'm like, no, you don't understand. That's too big. I just I panic. I mean, I think about the dollars. I think about the dollars, but I think about the time, right? If I use myself as an example, I'm like, but yet I buy probably 5 books a week. And I'm peering through things and hundreds of articles. And so I'm continually learning. I'm just not getting credit for it, so to speak, right? So with that in mind, and Louise, yes, that was a coffee or lunch invite. He was asking if I could join him, but it's the day before, Louise, not on the 17th, because I got to be at Coachella Music Festival after I keynote. Sorry, we're kind of getting off on lots of interesting tangents here. But he goes on to say, I just did a seminar for students, grads and undergrads and working professionals who are interested in technical sales and sales engineering. One of the things we said in the seminar was at a university is that certifications and proven skills are actually becoming more valuable than degrees.
They are.
Right? Yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a lot of reasons for that, right? You know, and I think that the one thing that we're not paying attention to is the level of global income inequality that's happening, and the access and the financial pressure. Right now we have $1.5 trillion of student debt in the United States, and it's not dischargeable by bankruptcy. This is larger than the housing bubble that we had that instituted the financial crisis of 2007, 2008. An average student, just an average student, is graduating with $35,000 worth of debt. And the problem is, the dirty secret is a lot of that debt is incurred before life circumstances force them to drop out of school. So they're stuck with the price tag and not the degree.
Wow.
And there is a very interesting book. If any of you are interested, you should read this book called Paying for the Party. And it was a team of sociologists who did a long-term living in the dorm study with a group of students in just an average Midwestern middle tier university. And what they discovered was, it wasn't the education. The people who were the kids who were successful in the education sphere were the ones who didn't have to work, who had fathers who would pay for clothes and cars and parties and meeting the right people. It was the people who were on the edge, who were just at the upper, lower middle, and lower middle class, who were looking at the college degree to help them advance. What they ended up doing is not being able to tap into those social systems. They couldn't go to the parties. They had kids. They were at home. The average learner is not a 17-year-old who's entering college. That's insane. That myth was blown up like 25 years ago.
Right.
The problem is those women who were on the edge because of student debt were actually driven farther down the socioeconomic ladder and would have been better off if they had never gone to college in the first place.
Wow.
And that is a story that is playing out every day in people's lives everywhere, that no one seems to want to talk about, grapple with, or think their way through. And that's what I've dedicated my life to, thinking my way through that problem, because I think it's huge. And so got to think a little bit more critically about what we're investing in. Continually, as the last 6 years have shown, higher ed enrollment is decreasing. Consumer confidence in the educational system is decreasing, mostly because kids are sitting in school and they're being shown things on a board, and they look at their phone and they look at YouTube and they go, yeah, that's how that works. Now what?
Right. Or they can see others who are social media influencers with 1 million followers who are dropping, bringing down a boatload of money because of sponsorships that they're getting, and they haven't gone the university, college, technical school route, and yet they are able to earn a livelihood that's more than sustainable, so to speak. Got another comment here. Some from Swaletheu. Entrance requirements for entry to advanced programs is one of the reasons these universities are losing students. That's an interesting perspective as well. I mean, I can speak for myself on this. When I was getting my first graduate degree, and so this was in 1979, I'd graduated with a bachelor's, and it wasn't the bachelor's degree I set out for. But then
it never is for any of us.
Well, life threw me a curveball. But
that class final, switch my major, whatever.
Right. Well, I say to people that the universe, if you are not on the path to your calling, and this is me, so just humor me for a second here, and you just pick a profession, but it's not aligned, and I'm not saying aligned with passion, I mean like aligned with your purpose and raison d'etre for being on this planet, you will be knocked over the head several times until you figure out what that path is. So I was knocked over the head, and my the person who was counseling me at the time through the Dean of Students office said, you're going to have to take the entrance exams to get into graduate school. And the program I wanted to get into was a master's in counseling, which is now counseling psychology at UW-Madison. I performed very poorly on tests, so poorly that my entrance scores did not allow me to get in. But by the grace of the universe, I was allowed in. And not only did I excel in that master's program, I went on a few years later to get an MBA and so on. And now I teach at the graduate level. And I give my students all the test questions in advance, because nobody should fail. But they're thought questions, so you still have to think. But I would be one of those. I'd be one of those. Like I couldn't like entrance exam. I don't know what I would have done at that point,
Mhm.
because it would have been a hard road to toe. I still wasn't clear on exactly where I was to be on this earth. And so I think that changes too, right? So people, as they live and they grow and they learn and they age and new things come out, we have to be able, that's what you're talking about, is that ability for these systems to flex and to flex quickly, versus my second graduate degree saying to me, oh, we'll only accept in 6 of your graduate credits from your other graduate degree. I said, you're going to make me retake classes I've already taken, right?
Yeah.
Elsewhere. And they said, oh, maybe we'll take 12. I mean, it's like, if I had to fight, I had to fight.
Yeah.
You don't want to be fighting anymore.
Right. Exactly. And you shouldn't have to. Like the testing system is not set up to test for aptitude. It's just a simple way for you to winnow out it's an administrative tool at the heart of it. It doesn't have anything to do with demonstration of knowledge, with personal capacity and passion around what you're learning. We can talk for days about how the SAT is skewed to a specific demographic, and how minority populations who think differently multiculturally, this ridiculous testing regime has got to go. And I'm really glad that a lot of colleges are now suspending the SAT. They're starting to see that this was a cultural tool. It was not a real assessment tool, and it was an administrative tool. It wasn't what a person is actually capable of. So, I truly believe that entrance exams have to change. Now, we have interviews with people, and we ask them to demonstrate through a multiplicity of tools, what their knowledge is, how they got it, can they articulate it, that's what we're interested in. And are you interested in studying this or that? And for example, our finals, we don't have 200 question multiple choice finals, because that's ridiculous. That doesn't tell me anything. But what we do have is we ask people, what did you learn? Articulate what you learned. Articulate how you feel about what you learned. Tell us how you're going to apply what you learned in this class to your personal and professional life after you leave this class. And we also give people the option to add an artistic component. Paint, write, do a video, do a multimedia presentation, do something that shows us that you're activating both sides. You're activating that creative side. If you don't feel like you're creative, you find out you can be.
Yeah.
And your intellectual side. You don't feel like you're intellectual? Well, you can show us in other means. Because the testing thing, that never showed anybody's talents at all.
Right.
I don't think.
Well, aren't you also developing the person again, this holistic view of how you show up and how you present? There's a couple of other comments that have come up here. One from Sandra in Canada. The need for trades is driving a resurgence in apprenticeship programs, which I think is we're going to see more of. That was the case even like when I visited Australia a number of years ago. That was one of my observations as well. And then Louise said, USC just made some new exceptions for their MBA entrance exams. So that's kind of a statement as well. But I want you to take us forward. Let's do in like the time that we have together. Do 2 things for me. What's the next disruption? Because I know that you're always on the edge of that, the next disruption in the higher education system. And then what are some of those competencies or skills that we need to develop to survive in the future? Because I know that you're always having to think about that in order to say, how do we stay relevant to our students?
Yeah, we're really quite obsessed with that. And I think, the major condition we have right now that we're grappling with and will continue to grapple with is this notion of hyper complexity. We're linear beings. We tend to think that A plus B equals C.
Right.
We don't tend to see that sometimes A squared and squared and squared takes you to a completely different outcome than you think you're dealing with. And, for me, the biggest disruptions that are coming have to do with artificial intelligence and climate change. And the displacement that's going to come on the part of people who are being forced out of their geographical areas because of climate change and weather effects. The future is mobile. The future is mobile, and it's AI driven, and it's going to be, how do we access anyone at any moment, at any time,
Yeah.
and get them the learning and the knowledge and the connection that they need. And so that is going to be mobile, whether it's laptop, whether it's tablet, whether it's mobile, simply because populations are going to start moving. Hypercomplexity is upon us. Coronavirus,
Right.
hello,
Right.
pandemic, been expecting it.
Right.
But what it's done is it's really people's eyes are suddenly open to something that we know has been here forever. You and I have talked about this,
Right.
Lori. It's like,
Right.
it's not the pandemic, it's the public reaction, it's the manufacturing, it's the just-in-time inventory, it's the economic system that's tied into the health
Right.
system, that's tied into the, I mean, it's all one big system. So that finding those vulnerabilities in that system is what's going to break the system. And so the skills that we need are really going to have to be, how do we take this in? How do we feel about it? How do we adapt to it? And I have sort of a list of like skills that we're really focused on, that I can go through. But it's really that nexus between population movement and artificial intelligence radically changing. Artificial intelligence was the first thing that discovered coronavirus, by the way. It was an AI called Blue Dot, and it noticed something going on in Wuhan. Hello.
Right.
And we have some AIs working on vaccines right now, so good for us. Let's
Right.
hope. We still need humans to interact, but it's those things that the educational system is just, they're just sitting here. I don't understand. I don't understand why they don't tell their students the truth. That they're not the answer, but they're going to help the student find the answer. And they could be the answer for certain students, but they're not the answer for every student. And until we can say that, I don't know how we really help people.
Well, and it's maybe, and this is going to sound like a strange reaction to that, but maybe it becomes the roles of our communities and our school systems at lower levels. I mean, middle school, high school, guidance counselors, and others, parents who who make it okay, because there are some, I'll give you two examples. One is Nevada State College here in where I live in Las Vegas is the second fastest growing state college of its kind in the United States. But it is solely for first generation. Well, I don't want to say solely, but they cater to first generation Americans or immigrants. And that has caused their population to soar, and they have a very, very low tuition, and they will subsidize you. They will find a way to subsidize you. So they are growing by leaps and bounds. But there's a limit to that too. I always say to people, when you see this soaring growth, I've seen it in more industries in my lifetime. There's always a downfall because it can't continue. And so you have to be thinking about what's the down be, right? Like where is that coming? What does that mean? And how do we prepare for it rather than react to it. The second thing that your conversation struck for me was Karen Dietz, who was on my first show, teaches business storytelling skills through virtual reality at a university.
Huge.
In San Diego.
Huge.
And I think that that's the community piece, right? That's coming in. And what I think is so crazy is that these universities are teaching AI, but not using it, right? I mean, that's what you're talking about is shift your frame and start to use these things that you're teaching students, not just have them learn about it and use it in another environment.
100%. 100%. And, Georgia Tech was a great example of this. Their AI department got together and decided whether they could create an AI teacher's assistant and whether their students would be able to identify the AI from the actual human TAs. And the first time they ran it, AI students kind of picked up pretty quick. The second semester they ran it, only 50% of their students were able to identify which one was the AI versus the human. And that's 2 semesters. And the unfortunate part was 10% of the students identified one of the humans as the AI, which, I don't know. I don't know how that kid reacted to that. It's like, oh, okay.
Wow. Well, what
But
does that tell you, right? I
yeah,
mean,
but that's an example of, hey, we're working on this. Let's put this in the classroom and let students experience it, and really wrap their heads around what that means. It is time to stop cramming for the test. It is time to stop that. We're going back to the way humans learn, y'all. It's like there was no official, factory-based assembly line educational system in the 1400s, 1500s, 1600s. Those explosions in scientific knowledge were because of apprenticeships, because of people getting together in coffee houses and sharing their expertise with everybody. It was because of guilds that were started around, the precursors of associations, Renaissance. That's what learning was. We can recreate that. Now we have to recreate it at scale. So we're actually doing the most human thing we can think of to do, which is look at a system that doesn't seem to work anymore and make different choices. And that, at the heart of it, is exactly the transition that we have to move through, but we need to move through it quicker. We're not moving through it fast enough.
well, because why? What is it that you see as the one stumbling block to making that discontinuous kind of leap forward?
Money.
Money? Okay.
I see it as money, not just student debt. I see it as money, endowments,
Oh,
in structural
yeah.
colleges fighting for this tuition so they can, I see it as, government funding for this, that, and the other thing, those formulas that are antiquated,
Yeah.
paying by the seat for students,
Yeah.
all of that, it's a structural financial issue that is blocking education from flourishing.
Wow. We have a couple more comments. Lisa said, statistically, Latin, I'm assuming the X means Gen X students are the least likely group to attend college or even graduate. I am determined um, to raise this bar, become part of the 3% to get a PhD, and be the representation and advocate in some capacity. Along with this educational paradigm shift that you're both discussing, diversity awareness courses and collaborative action is worth discussing. Do we believe systematic racism will continue to be a challenge in our future? And P.S. I'm also not a great test taker. And she talks a little bit about the tests are not designed to capture our wholeness. And then she says, my tests are the exception. I'm just lucky I've had her a couple terms. Thank you, Lisa, for your very kind words. So she kind of gives us something to ping off of there if you want to
Yeah.
speak to
Diversity
that.
is a huge problem. It is a huge problem. It is structural and it's endemic. It goes along with sexism, it goes along with misogyny, it goes along with all of the stereotypes and biases that we've built in our heads and the structures we built underneath that support our worldview.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing, the diversity question has to advance to the inclusion question. And I heard this with a group of students I was working with last year, and someone said, diversity is getting invited to the party,
Right.
but inclusion is being able to eat and
Right.
being able to be welcomed at the
Right.
party. And we have to really shift that institutional bias we have and our own biases and stereotypes, and realize that we all have our own lenses. For example, I may be an LGBTQ white woman. That's all I understand about diversity. I can't translate my experience to blanket look at my other brothers and sisters and go, here's what you need to do. Oh, I understand what you face. Oh, no, that's bullshit. I
Right.
don't. The more intersectionality we have around that is going to be absolutely crucial. Now, here's the bad news. The bad news is because of socioeconomic and impacts of climate change and what's going on, we're reverting back to a very nationalist, race-based conversation in the United States. It's happening all over the world. We're taking steps backwards at the same moment. If y'all are wondering where your students are, at the same moment, we have the most welcoming generation underneath us. The kids are all right. The
Yeah.
kids, I don't worry about the kids.
Right.
I worry about my contemporaries. I'm
Yeah.
not worried about the kids. And we've been banging our heads against this, as Gen X, we've been banging against this for years. But these kids underneath don't apply those labels.
Right.
And if they do, they certainly don't do it at the same proportion and level that we see it being done. And so, my God, we have got to have a multicultural competence built into everything, every facet of our lives, whether it's education, whether it's business, whether I don't care what it is. We have got to see humans as humans. And until we teach kids how to be human with empathy, not can you pass a
Right.
quiz, with emotional intelligence, not whether you can regurgitate a paragraph, we're going to lose out on advancing that at the most crucial time in human history when we need more of it than we've ever had before.
Well, I've always said, to your point, there seems to be this pendulum. This pendulum
Mhm,
keeps swinging. And what you're
mhm,
saying is we have got to swing this pendulum back to include this humanness, what you call self-mastery,
mhm.
inside of education. And it needs to
Yeah,
become part and parcel. It's not just aligned, but integrated, built into the DNA
mm,
of that. Because and I always say, it's to your point, and you mentioned this earlier, even when I teach, life shows up. It shows
yeah,
up. You
it
can have
shows up.
I can have the best made syllabus. I can have the best made plans for my students, and it shows up, and it shows up every single term, and we still get through it. But we have
Yeah.
to integrate it and weave it in, and that's
Mhm.
not what we're really good at doing. But I want to see if there's any I don't see any more new comments, but I do want you to come back to something that you teased us
Sure.
with a few minutes ago. And you said, if you're interested, that I'll tell you about some of those, like, skills or future proof sorts of things that will guarantee survival. Touch on a
Mhm.
few of those for us, because we
Sure.
alluded to that also in the when we pitched this session on LinkedIn and also on YouTube.
Yep. These are a blend of this is based on our reinterpretation of the liberal arts. And
Okay.
so we have 7 different areas that we look at and that I have really come to internalize, and I put in my own teaching. And this idea of meeting global challenges. You're a global citizen, globalization, futurism, trends. Absolutely. We have to understand the systems that are surrounding us. And we also need to be mindfulness and meditation and those sorts of skills that can help us center ourselves
Hmm.
as we look at this dynamic environment so we don't get overwhelmed by it. Absolutely. Diversity and inclusion, teaming. How do you form teams on the fly and then disband them? Humility,
Hmm.
how to be more humble, how to say I don't know, how to say I'm gonna find out, how to release that ego that drives us all is a crucial skill that no one really teaches, no one
Right.
really talks about, right?
Right.
It's like nimble creativity, entrepreneurship.
Hmm.
There are business skills. There are sales skills, not sales like, I think about sales as, coffees for closers, from that movie, it's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is persuasion. It's how to communicate with people about things that are important to you,
Hmm.
and make changes. And then this idea of empathy and critical thinking, using universal intellectual standards on everything you bring in is so crucial. And there are frameworks you can use to do this. It's not a mystery. You don't
Right.
have to go to 6 months worth of, a literature class, even though I really would advocate for that. But you don't have to go there to learn critical thinking, which is what
Right.
everyone says comes out of those types of courses. No, there's actually skills behind that are actually articulable. And then choice and decision.
Hmm. Yep.
Choice and decision.
Yep. Yep.
Because culturally, we limit our choices. We see choice through different frames. We automatically reject choices that we could actually make simply because of how we look at it. That's just absolutely key. So for me, it's that type of skill set that will prepare you to bring in any information you want. If you want to be in accounting, if you want to go into medicine, if you want to go into physics, if you want to go into, by all means do so, but do so from a place of empathy, from humility, from critical thinking, from entrepreneurship. What could we do about this? If
Right.
this, then that.
Right.
If you do that, you're going to be miles ahead of the game. And I don't care where you get it from, but you got
Right.
to get it.
Well, but I'm looking at these skills, and I'm thinking to myself, do you know how hard it is to pitch classes to universities today on some of these topics?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's why we set up our own.
I know what it took. I'm very blessed.
Mhm.
Because my life's a series of serendipity episodes, is what I say. I just kind of fall into stuff. But when I think about, let's just take the course I'm teaching this term on strategic thinking, which embodies, by the way, a number of these different pieces. How do we make choices and decisions, and how do we do from a strategic frame? What does it mean even for strategic thinking to be different than critical thinking? Because they are two different skill sets. The futurism piece of that. Why is mindfulness? Why is reflection so important? Why is the dialogue, the conversation, the ability to be ego less hard thing to do, right? Within those conversations, in order for it to be divergent, not convergent. I was lucky. I was blessed that I had a university that said we can do that as a special topic. But
Fantastic.
if I were to go anywhere else, you and I'm going to do a course for you on this. That'll be a short one. Because I keep getting asked. People keep saying to me, are you going to do something that's, not a university course in strategic thinking? The answer is yes. And it's for Ubiquity University, where that's coming in. But I think to myself, where else do you learn this? You don't learn it anywhere. Like, where did I learn it? Right.
Right. You didn't learn it in school.
No.
Because the school system, we're the school system that we have, and the predominant theory that we go on is hunt down and kill the error. Right? That's a very narrow focus. That's a very, that does not teach us how to build divergent thinking. That's very convergent. The entire educational experience that a lot of us had was very convergent. It's the people we met along the way, Lori. It's those serendipitous contacts. It's my getting on the phone with you and just yakking for an hour about something. It's the people I've met along the way who have taught me to that's not the way you do this. There is a divergent way to do this. But there are monetary interests invested in test books and testing that is going to keep that example going. So yeah, we should be able, and shoot, if we have to bury it in something that sounds exactly what they're looking for and then just kind of bury it in there, well, we'll do that too.
Right. Well, no, I know that.
We're here to teach, and that's, the best teachers in the world are the ones who model what they're teaching.
Well, and aren't we blessed, both you and I, to have had those role models in our lifetime so that we actually have a frame of reference to be able to teach in that manner. So as we're closing up for today, the thing that really kind of strikes me is, like, what should I do? Like, if I were listening to this at any point in time, this hour that we're together, what are like one or two or three things that anyone who listens to this needs to do in their life right now? Yes. Right now.
Focus on learning how to learn. Set up an independent learning plan for yourself. What questions do you have? What do you need to find out about? And be intentional about Google alerts you set up, about articles you look for, about books that you read, about experts you can identify and reach out to. Right now, if you have a question that you don't have answered, learn how to learn and put a plan in place. 1 hour of reading and video per day. What are you going to do? Plan it out. Save an hour for yourself. Set some learning goals. Track them. Turn your ideas into experiments. Start piloting with ideas and playing with ideas. Every night, reflect. What did I learn today? What can I take forward from today that makes me smarter, makes me more capable, makes me a better human? And then plan what you're going to do for tomorrow. It's like you need an independent learning plan. And I do this for myself every single, I just have a regiment that I go through. And even though we're learning all the time and picking up all the time, this is an intentional deep dive. So I intentionally deep dove into artificial intelligence for a year, and I still do that. I intentionally deep dove into additive manufacturing for 6 months. I intentionally dove into chaos theory for 6 months because those were the things that I wanted to learn, and I figured out how to do it. So please set up a learning plan for yourself and really recognize what's a problem that can be solved quickly and what's a wicked problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Solve the small problems, get them dealt with. Identify those wicked problems, those ones that you start pulling on and you realize, oh God, that's connected to this and that's connected to this, it's connected to this. And learn how to tell the difference between those two and set up different problem solving techniques and ideas to get through the wicked ones and get through the regular ones. If you can do that, and if you can raise your awareness and raise your consciousness, you're going to be miles ahead. And there's one more thing I would do. I really would look at integral theory from Ken Wilber. He's our chancellor. He wrote a number of books about integral theory, but let me just boil it down for you.
Okay.
There's 4 quadrants, and you have to get in alignment with all 4 of those quadrants before you're going to experience the kind of success that you want to get. There's an individual interior, which is your individual thoughts, your individual interior. You have got to align that with your individual exterior. Are you really yourself? Are you acting? Are you allowing your inner and outer world to get disjointed? If you are, because we all need to adapt, right? We all have different faces, we wear different people. That's fine. It's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is if your interior is crying out, your exterior is making things look like it's fine, you're not doing yourselves any favors. Collectively, it's the same thing. Collectively, interiorly, if you are not aligned with the interior of your company, your organization, your educational institution, your church, your PTA, I don't care what it is, if you are not interiorly aligned and if the interior of your collective isn't healthy, you're going to do damage when the collective goes exterior and starts interacting with the world. If you can look at those 4 quadrants and stay in alignment, your individual interior mirrors the actions that you take. Who you associate with and the groups that you're in are healthy interiorly, so they can work with the outside. If you can do that in any setting you're in, go for it. That is what's going to blow your mind. That is what's going to blow all your potential wide open. Then you're going to make a real impact.
That is phenomenal. And let's put up a resource for people as well, where they can take a look at this work and learn more. Shelly, I feel like we've been very blessed today to learn from you. And people are saying that they love the conversation, they love the passion. Learn to learn is just something that they're going to adapt. So thank you so much for joining me here today on Level Up with Lori, episode 6. And I'm telling you, you got something new to say. You're coming back because I want to stay ahead of what's going on here. So let's.
You're amazing. You're amazing. And thank you so much for inviting me. I had a great time, and we'll be talking soon.
We'll talk again. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.